everybody, and welcome back. We are diving deep today into saving your future. And I'll tell you, this book really got me thinking about building a solid financial foundation, especially with how the economy can be. Sometimes great, sometimes a little rocky.
Yeah, and you know what I thought was really interesting? How the book uses the idea of building an actual house to think about financial stability. Pretty clever.
I know, right? Like, who starts with the roof? You got to have a strong foundation first.
Exactly. It's all about those essential layers they talk about. Protection, dealing with debt, that emergency fund, and of course investing. Those are your foundation. Just like a house needs a good, strong base to make it through a storm, you need those layers to handle whatever the economy throws your way.
So true. Okay, let's break these layers down a bit. Protection's the first one, right? And I'm guessing that mostly means insurance, right? But I bet a lot of people listening, especially if they're younger, might think, why is that so important now?
You hit the nail on the head. It's easy to be like, I'm young, plenty of time. But the book, it really highlights how important it is to have that safety net, especially when you start having more responsibilities. I mean, think about it. A mortgage, kids, even those student loans that never seem to go away. If something unexpected happens, insurance, it can really protect your family.
It's like that peace of mind, knowing your family is taken care of no matter what. Speaking of things that weigh you down, let's talk about debt. It's everywhere. The book seems to say, get on top of that early.
Totally. There's this example that really stuck with me. They talk about a $5,000 credit card balance, which, let's face it, isn't that much these days. But if you're only doing those minimum payments, it'll take you over 10 years to pay it off. Plus, you end up paying thousands extra in interest.
11 years. Wow. It's like being chained to it. Okay, so how do you get out of debt? Everyone says spend less, but what does the book actually suggest doing?
Well, they actually have some good strategies. They say, first, just get it all out there. List out every single debt you have. Credit cards, loans, your mortgage, even if you owe your friend $20. Seeing it all written down, that can be scary. But it also helps you figure out where to start, Make a plan.
So it's don't hide from it. Confront it head on.
Exactly. They actually say to tackle it two ways. First, go for the small wins. Pay off those little debts first. It gives you a little boost to keep going. And it frees up cash to put towards the big stuff. And speaking of the big stuff, they actually suggest looking into paying more on your mortgage each month. Even a little bit can save you a ton in interest over time.
So you're being proactive, taking control. Okay, but before we get too far ahead, we've got to talk about that financial cushion. The emergency fund.
Right. Layer 3, and this one, it's all about those unexpected things. Lose your job. Huge medical bill. Car decides to fall apart. You can't always predict those.
So how much should we be aiming to have in this emergency fund?
Well, the book suggests at least 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses. But they do point out that, everyone's situation is different.
Okay, makes sense. And last but not least, the investment layer. Now, this is where things get really interesting, at least for me, saving your future. It also talks about this wealth formula. What is that exactly?
So a lot of people don't quite get how building wealth really works. This formula breaks it down. Money plus time, plus rate of return inflation tax, wealth.
Okay, so it's not just make more money. There's actually a whole bunch of things that go into it.
Totally. So money, obviously that's your income. But more importantly, how much are you saving from that? The book is big on paying yourself first.
Hold on, you mean before bills, before anything, set aside some money for savings?
Exactly. It's a non-negotiable. They suggest shooting for at least 5 to 10% of what you earn, more if you can, but even a little bit adds up.
Got it. So that's the money part. What about time?
That's where the whole compound interest thing comes in. It's letting your money work for you, basically. The book has these two characters, Mr. A and Mr. B. It's a really good way to explain it.
Oh, yeah. Mr. A goes for simple interest. Mr. B does compound interest. And the difference by the end is huge, right?
Huge is an understatement. The point is, the sooner you start investing, even small amounts, the more time it has to grow.
Compound interest, it's like the snowball effect of money. All right, so how about rate of return? What does that even mean?
It's basically the percentage gain you're getting on your investments. But the book takes it a step further. They talk about your real rate of return. And this is where it gets important to think about inflation and taxes.
Inflation, the silent pillar of your savings.
That's so true. The book makes a good point about how much more expensive everything is now compared to a few decades ago.
For sure. They're basically saying that if your investments aren't earning more than the inflation rate, you're actually losing money.
Ouch. And then there's taxes. Always got to pay the tax, man. Right. Well, the book explains how different investments, they're taxed differently. Some it's taxed now, some it's taxed later, and then there's tax advantaged. The takeaway, picking smart investments, ones that are good tax-wise, it can make a big difference in the long run.
So it's like playing chess with your money. Gotta think several moves ahead. I see how all these pieces of the wealth formula fit together now. It's not about being rich, it's about being smart. Making your money work for you.
Exactly. Get those dynamics working in your favor, make good choices, and that's how you get to real financial security.
Okay, let's dig a little deeper into some of this, starting with the whole debt thing. You mentioned that credit card example.
Yeah, you can get stuck just making those minimum payments forever. But saving your future, they're saying it doesn't have to be that way. There are ways to break free.
Okay, so besides just like listing everything out, what can people actually do? Everyone talks about budgeting, but honestly, I'm terrible at sticking to one.
Oh, tell me about it. The book actually says that budgets, they can feel kind of restrictive, like I can't have anything fun. But they say, what if you thought of it differently? Like a budget isn't a punishment. It's a way to make sure you're spending on what you really care about, your goals, you know?
So instead of I can't spend money, it's more like I'm choosing where my money goes.
Right. They even talk about something called reverse budgeting. Instead of spending first, then seeing what's left, you flip it. Automate your savings. Set it up so money goes straight into your savings or investments right away. Then whatever's left, that's for everything else.
Wow, I've never thought of it like that. So you're basically making sure you save first, then figure out the rest.
Exactly. Might sound like a small change, but it can make a big difference mentally. Helps you prioritize. Makes saving feel less like a chore, more like an investment, which it is.
Love it. Okay, something else that caught my eye, the whole X-curve thing. I've never heard that before, at least not about money.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So the book's saying how responsible you are and how much wealth you have, those two things, they kind of go in opposite directions throughout your life. Picture like a graph, two lines that cross, making an X.
Okay, so like when you're younger, responsibility's high because maybe you're starting a family, buying a house, but your wealth, that might be lower because you're just starting out in your career.
Bingo. Then as life goes on, your responsibilities, they might ease up a bit. Kids grow up, maybe your mortgage is paid off, things like that. But your wealth, ideally, that keeps going up as you save and invest over time.
So the X, that's the point where those lines cross, where your wealth kind of overtakes your responsibility.
And the book's saying, get this, understanding how that works, it can really help you plan, especially when you think about life insurance and that whole self-security idea.
Yeah, that's another thing that really stood out to me. It's like taking ownership, right, of your financial future, particularly in retirement.
Absolutely. It's realizing that the old ways, company pensions, even Social Security, those might not cut it anymore.
Yeah, especially now, people are living longer. It seems like those systems are struggling to keep up.
100%. That's where self-security comes in. You're building your own safety net. Smart saving, investing, making a plan. You're not relying on someone else to take care of you.
So you're not just hoping for the best, you're making it happen. But that sounds kind of daunting. Like, where do you even start with self-security?
Don't worry, the book, it breaks it all down. It gets into different retirement plans. You've got your defined benefit plans. Those are like the old school pensions. Then there's defined contribution, like 401k.
Right. I remember reading about those. With defined benefit, it's like you're guaranteed a certain amount each month in retirement based on your salary and how long you worked. But with defined contribution, it's on you to put money in, and how well your investments do. That determines how much you'll have.
Exactly. And the book's like, look, know which one you have.
I love it. Okay, so we've covered retirement, but saving your future also gets into some other big things. Life insurance. We touched upon that earlier.
Yeah, life insurance. It feels like one of those things you know you should think about, but kind of just put it off. Why is it so important, especially thinking back to that X-curve idea? You're right, it's easy to procrastinate on. But remember that graph. When you've got those big responsibilities, life insurance, it's like a safety net for your family. If something happens to you, it's there to help them out, so they don't have to worry about money on top of everything else.
It's about making sure they're taken care of. But there are so many types of life insurance. Term life, whole life. The book even talks about universal life. How do you know what's right?
Yeah, it gets confusing fast. The book actually does a great job explaining the differences. Term life, it's like renting coverage. You've got it for a certain number of years. Whole life, that's lifelong coverage, and it usually builds cash value too.
So term life is cheaper, but whole life is more, well, whole. What about this other one?
So universal life and index universal life, those give you more flexibility. You can change your premiums, your death benefits, stuff like that. But they're more complicated, might not be the best fit for everyone. The book actually talks about this whole buy term, invest the difference debate.
Buy term, invest the difference. Okay, what's that all about?
Basically, you get term life insurance because it's usually cheaper. Then all the money you would spend on the more expensive whole life, you invest that instead.
So you're kind of like self-insuring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book, it presents both sides, though.
Mm.
There are pros and cons to each approach.
So it's all about figuring out what level of risk you're comfortable with, what your goals are. Makes sense. Now, besides insurance and retirement, saving your future gets into some other important stuff like Medicare, long-term care, things like that.
Right. Those are the things you don't always want to think about, but they're important, especially as you get older.
So you're covered if something unexpected happens, health-wise, in retirement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's long-term care insurance, which, with people living longer, that's becoming a bigger and bigger deal.
Yeah, nobody wants to think about needing long-term care, but the costs, those can be scary.
Oh, absolutely. And the book makes a pretty shocking point. They say 70% of people over 65 will need some kind of long-term care.
Wow.
Yeah.
Seriously. 70%.
Yeah. Whether it's help at home, assisted living, a nursing home, it adds up fast. And that's where long-term care insurance comes in. It can help cover those costs so you're not wiping out your savings.
So you're planning ahead, thinking about those what ifs.
Exactly. And finally, the book wraps up by talking about estate planning, which again, a lot of people think, oh, that's for rich people. But it's important for everyone, no matter how much money you have.
It's about having everything in order, knowing your wishes will be followed.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated. A basic will, a more complex trust, whatever works for you.
Wow, saving your future really does cover a lot. It's like the ultimate guide to getting your financial life in order. Managing debt, investing smart, planning for retirement, protecting your family, all of it.
It really does. And I think the most important thing is the book makes it clear this isn't about reaching some finish line. It's a journey, right?
Yeah.
You keep learning, keep making those smart choices, and that's how you build real financial security.
You take control of your own destiny. Well, this has been great. Thanks so much for joining us today to dive into saving your future. I feel like I learned a ton.
My pleasure. And for everyone listening, remember, knowledge is power. Take control of your finances. You got this.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.